Hello and welcome to Pastor's Perspective. I'm your host, Brian Perez. It is Tuesday, April 22nd, and we are here live until 4 o'clock Pacific time at 888-564-6173. Give us a call if you've got a question about the Bible, the Christian faith, things of that nature. 888-564-6173 is our number. You can also send in your questions on the Pastor's Perspective Facebook page using Messenger, or on the Pastor's Perspective Instagram by DMing us, or go to our flagship radio station's website, kwave.com. There's a Pastor's Perspective page there that you can fill out a form and send in your question. But the best way to get an answer is to call us when we're here, like today, at 888-564-6173. We've got Brian Brodersen and Bobby Conway here to answer your questions. How you guys doing?
Wonderful, thank you.
Yes, and likewise, had a lovely long walk with my wife and my dog today. And it was nice. It was good. Down at the beach, and here we are.
Very nice.
Ready to go.
It's definitely a beach day in Southern California. At least it looks like it.
Ready to go. And I have, first of all, a question for Bobby about the Graphite Apologist. How did the launch of your YouTube channel go?
Well, it's going slow. You know, anytime you have to start a new channel, you know, that's going to take a little bit of time. So we've only done one post to alert our original audience. So I'd love if those that are listening would go to YouTube and subscribe to the Graphite Apologists, and there they can even see kind of a collage of my artistic journey in 60 seconds of different pieces I've done. But then I'll be featuring different pieces. Like, for example, I think I'm about to draw the Pope because that's a current issue, and I might put like the keys in his hand and go, well, who owns the keys? But then, you know, also be respectful while I do it, but just ask a question. But I'm going to be putting lots of apologetic arguments to art, and it'll be 20-hour drawings that they can see in 60 seconds. So if they wouldn't mind subscribing and sharing the channel with their friends, that would be awesome.
When are you going to draw Pastor Brian?
Well, you know what? I would like to draw Pastor Brian. I think about that sometimes. I'd like to put him on a I'd do something like the VW bus or surfboard, make him look all. I don't know. I might put him in the ocean and boxing somebody when he got younger and mad at people for ripping off his wave. And he would,
maybe boxing a shark. How's that?
Yeah. There might be some.
Great.
There might be some photos of that kind of stuff you could borrow. Yeah, and I know you'll do a good job with the hair because you did a great job with your own hair, and our haircuts are similar, so that'll be good.
That's right. I'll deck it on. I'll grow it out for you a little bit and have it all crazy looking like you just woke up.
All right. Well, I'm a big fan of the Graphite Apologist, so really proud of you, and
thank you.
You know, always just amazed at this talent that just emerged in your life at 50 years old, and to me is the craziest thing.
So yeah, just go to.
Cool
go ahead, Bobby. I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say what's cool about this whole thing is it's truly a niche. I've done my research, and I'm excited because I think for an apologist and to be an artist and to put those two together.
Yes.
And I think it's going to allow me, you know, it's a small channel, but if God was to grow it, I think that it would be really cool to put stuff out there. And then there's a link to it's to Ponderware on Shopify. And so some of these are going to be T-shirts and prints that people can put in their office or whatever. So I'm super excited. I really hope that I'm going to really keep working on this to hone my skills, but people can grow with me and watch me develop as an artist. You know, I'm a rookie at this, but I feel like the quality is good enough to put out there, but I trust I'll look back in 5 years and think, why did I start it then? Mm-hmm. But I'm hoping to be able to give people a way to get their feet wet in the world of apologetics through art.
Yeah, That's great. Yeah, Brian and I are still kind of waiting for that gift to emerge. Some gift. I don't know what it might be, but
I can do stick figures, but that's about it.
Yeah,
Art's not my thing.
You can join a band again, Brian.
Start a band again. Yeah, that's the only thing that comes to mind. And then I think, I don't think I should do that.
Like death metal or something like that,
Hey, you guys opened for Van Halen, didn't you?
We did.
Or the other way around. Or, you opened for them.
No, it wasn't Van Halen. It was supposed to be Van Halen. This is before Van Halen was popular.
Yes.
I mean, because they were from the LA area, and we did some gigs at the same place that they would often play. So we were going to play with them, and then something happened that didn't work out. And then we were going to play with this guy named Sammy Hagar, who, funny enough, I still see him on like Instagram these days. But we ended up playing with this guy named Nick Gilder, who was a Canadian rocker. And his big hit was "Hot Child in the City." So
that guy.
Remember that song? Yeah. So that was a big hit. So believe it or not, Nick Gilder opened for us. So my band was a headline band, and it was basically because we knew the guy who was the who put on the whole event. So he was like, "Okay, you guys, you can." We got this guy Nick, and he's going to do his thing, and then you guys can just close out the night. And so that was it's crazy stuff. But right, okay, so back to Earth, back to reality.
Yes. Speaking of Earth,
wait.
Oh,
let's speak of Easter.
Okay, that already happened.
I know.
Okay.
But remember the question that we had yesterday.
Yes, and in fact, we have another one today. So
okay, good. Because I went home and brushed up on it because I was thinking, okay, now, when you don't think about these things, you don't think about them. So, so the idea that the term Easter is derived from this Estory or Eestry, and it was a pagan goddess. There's one reference to that in history from the 8th century. And that's the only one. So it was from that reference by the Venerable Bede, who was venerable and brilliant. But it was like a passing comment. And then I think because it came from Bede, it just became one of those things that, people latched onto. But I was mentioning yesterday, so the word Pascha or Paschal, so Passover, the Paschal lamb is the Passover lamb. And so the word Pascha was believed to have some connection with it, but then it also had a connection with a French word that meant the dawn, D-A-W-N. And so Easter was the French translation of that word that meant the dawn. So that the idea that the dawn was, the first day of the week, early in the morning on the first day of the week, that is what the reference was to. So
it has nothing to do with Ashtoreth of the Old Testament?
No.
As it says here?
No, nothing to do with that.
All right. Very interesting. And thanks for following up on that. So here's our other follow-up about Easter. Yasmin writes in and says, I brought my 5-year-old grandson to see the King of Kings movie last night. I told him that it was about Easter. Of course, this brought on a whole lot of questions. A couple that I never did understand myself are, why are there bunnies and Easter egg hunts? And why is there a Santa Claus? His questioning, as you can see, led to Jesus' birth, why we celebrate Christmas. I'm too embarrassed to tell you my weak explanations. How should I have answered him? Asks Yasmin.
Well, he's 5 years old. I think you probably did a better job than you're thinking. And so the Easter bunny thing is, the bunny probably was a throw over from pagan ideas because of the, because of the reproductive abilities of rabbits. They multiply rapidly, and the idea behind spring, of course, is like the new birth and life coming and so forth. So there probably was some pagan elements that brought about the bunny component to it. So, but like the world was pagan. That's what it was. And I mean, I use it in the past tense. I mean, the world is pagan. And so the Christians came and they saw Christ triumphing over paganism. So wherever people were at one time celebrating the gods and goddesses, they began to worship Christ.
Bobby?
Yeah, and it's important to talk to your 5-year-old about Sol Invictus and Saturnalia as well. But in the ancient Roman world, Sol Invictus, the unconquerable sun, and Saturnalia, kind of the idea were in the ancient Roman culture. The god Saturn, they had these different gods, right? Where they believed in the sun god or, Saturn, the different planets. And in the 4th century, it's my understanding that with, Constantine becoming the emperor of Rome, eventually what would take place is the church sort of created a Christmas tradition whereby, people would begin to worship, the coming of Christ into the world. And obviously they sought to clean up some of the pagan aspects, but then, you always have to compete with some of that stuff that would hang in there. And so some of the traditions, both from Christmas and Easter, also would end up deriving from later Germany, and some good, some not so good, like Easter bunny stuff. And then as it relates to the Christmas tree and decorating, you can see Martin Luther playing a part in that. So that's just been the attempt. Whenever you have a holiday, you're going to have believers and non-believers alike, and they're both going to try to make the most of their day off. And they're going to have traditions around that. And it's our responsibility to be biblically measured with it.
All right, Yasmin, thank you for sending in your question on the kwave.com Pastor's Perspective page. And speaking of holidays, today's like an unofficial holiday. It's Earth Day. So my question is, how should Christians, do we become environmental wackos, or is there some kind of an in-between, or what do we think of the earth? What should we think of the earth? Should we worship it?
Well, we shouldn't worship it, and we shouldn't think of it as Mother Earth, but we should remember that the earth is the Lord's and everything in it. He created it. So it's God's good creation. It's God's gift to us, and so we want to respect it and, honor it in as much as is possible. We don't want to senselessly, mindlessly destroy the earth. I mean, it's our home, so we need to take care of it. But obviously, much of paganism revolves around worshiping the earth, the inanimate, dirt and, the heavenly bodies and things like that are not any kind of deities, obviously, but they're not, conscious. They don't have minds or personalities or powers or any of that. So, Isaiah, I think, does the most brilliant job when he's talking about how, a person, he was describing this process of how they would create their idol. They would go into the forest, they would chop down a tree, they would take part of the wood and they would start a fire and they would cook their dinner, and then they would take another part of the wood and they would fashion it as a god, and they would bow down to worship it. And Isaiah said their minds are so hardened that they don't even realize they're bowing down to a block of wood. With part of it they cook their food, the other part they bow down and worship it. So I mean, he's talking about the irony of those practices. And I think if people are doing that, of course, which some people are, worshiping crystals and things like that, that is the incorrect way to think about the earth.
Okay, cool. 888-564-6173 is the number to call us until 4 o'clock. We've got Brian Broderson and Bobby Conway here to answer your questions. And we're going to go right to Jeff in Banning. Thank you, Jeff, for calling 888-564-6173. What's up?
My wife has some questions for you. We were reading the book of Judges this morning and or earlier this afternoon. And the way God dealt with, the judges, the people, how they'd turn their backs on God and then they'd call out for God and God would rescue them. And anyway, I'll let her just explain it to you the way she thinks. Gently, honey.
Hi.
Hi, Mrs. Jeff.
The one that... No, this is not Jeff.
No, I said Mrs. Jeff. I don't know what your name is.
My name's Elizabeth.
Okay, and so what did you want to know?
Well, in the when they were telling the story, they made God look to me like he was egotistical and that you have to worship him. And that's not how I see him. I think that perhaps maybe during the translations from Arabic or Jewish to English might have used a different word to make him look like he's... But I don't see him that way.
Is there a particular passage that you're referring to?
Well, he said he would help Israel fight their battles, but if they don't listen, then he was going to let them all be destroyed. So, I understand that part, but it seems to me like they're not portraying him true because he's a loving God. He's a good God. I don't see him as egotistical and, if you don't do it this my way, I'm going to kill you.
Okay, Bobby, what do you say to Elizabeth?
Yeah, Elizabeth, that's a good question. I mean, there is a sense where God's justice is definitely on display in the book of Judges, but so is the sin of the people in the book of Judges. It's a book that's going to end with, and everyone did what was right in his own eyes. And so that's really the theme that's taking place. It's egotistical people that will not bow their knee to a holy and sovereign and just God who is loving. And the very fact that he gives warnings, he didn't even owe them warnings, but because of his grace, they would be warned. This is who I am. This is how you're to operate. And keep in mind what's happening in Judges. They're in the promised land. There's judges that are set in place. And these judges are to lead the people in an upstanding way. And you have judges that are corrupt. You've got people that are corrupt. And they're new to this land, and it's the promised land. And this is the land that's been given to them as a promise. And God saying, this is who I am, and this is how I expect you to operate in this land, because you're supposed to be a light to the nations. And if you just want to be darkness to darkness, then fine, I'll send you into captivity. Not because I'm an egomaniac, but because you won't bow your knee to me. And so when you step back and look at it from that perspective, if God didn't intervene, God disciplines those whom he loves. He would be an unjust God if he never did intervene. And when you consider the sins that were taking place in that culture, it was horrific. So I think that it was God being a leader, and he was trying to help his people to be his people. Instead, they were wanting to act like the previous people that were living there, like the Canaanites. And there was a new way for them to live and a new direction for them to go. And so if you're picking up on egotism, I think I would encourage you to see his holy justice. And we have this tendency sometimes when God starts to judge, and I can do it too, to feel like, man, God's being harsh here. But I know whenever I'm thinking that way, it's because I'm failing to understand how holy he is and how sinful I am. And I think that to look at the Bible and go, I think God's loving, and I think that these guys then missed it, and so we have the wrong Bible in our hand. That's to put yourself in place over the Bible, and that would be the wrong approach. That's what you call having a magisterial approach to Scripture, looking at parts that don't digest well, and then sitting as a magistrate over it and going, yeah, well, something went wrong here. And so I would encourage you to always give the benefit of the doubt to the text and figure out that if you're ending up with the conclusion that God's egotistical, then you've interpreted wrongly, and you just got to go back and think about the bigger picture.
Elizabeth, you were going to say something?
I don't think God is egotistical. It seemed to me he was portrayed that way, but I don't think he is. Not from the other stories that I've heard.
Yeah, well, he's not, and the portrayal is accurate. I mean, it's just what it says. It's not somebody kind of misrepresenting God. God is the inspiration behind those scriptures. So the person who was writing those stories down was inspired by the Holy Spirit to write them down in the way that they are written. And like Bobby's saying, I just think one other thing to just remember, these people made a covenant with God. God made a covenant with them. And the covenant, their end of the covenant was to obey God, and God's part of the covenant was to bless them and to prosper them and to give them fruitful fields and wombs and, just to grant plenty to them and peace to them and all of those things. That was God's promise to them. But it was contingent on, you have to obey me. You have to do what I say. And like Bobby says in the book of Judges, you see that they did the exact opposite of that. Like that refrain goes, every person did what was right in their own eyes. And so that's what they were doing. They just thought, well, we don't need to obey God. We don't need to listen to God. And there's one story in Judges, I don't know if you've gotten there yet, but it gives you an idea of how brutal and wicked the societies had become, where this young woman is taken and she's raped by a mob and she is murdered. And it's just this incredibly horrific thing. And these are the people of God doing this. So, of course, there's going to be a judgment upon those kinds of things. So that's what you're reading out. It's not, God's not egotistical. He's also a judge. We can't let just one aspect of God's character overrule everything else. So God is love and God is just. And actually, true love has to be just. If there's no justice, you couldn't really say that God is love either. So, Bobby?
Yeah, and again, Elizabeth, I think that your initial feelings or response, you're not alone in that. I mean, a lot of people, like there's times where I'm reading the Bible and I'm thinking, man, God, this is seems pretty jacked up here. I'm not sure what's going on here, but I have to go through a process and get the big picture and try to get a sense of what's going on. But a couple thoughts would be, remember that Jesus, he would have been reading from what is known as the Septuagint. This is a translation that was put together during the intertestamental period, in that 400-year space between Malachi and Matthew. And that would have basically the same book of Judges that you and I have. And Jesus validated the scriptures. So the loving Jesus that we also see, we go to the book of Revelation, or you read the woes of Matthew 23, and he can put his judgment, rod on pretty quick. So the last thing I'd say is there's a book by Paul Copan that's helped a lot of us out with some of these Old Testament questions, and it's called, Is God a Moral Monster? And he is basing that off of a quote by Richard Dawkins, who talked about God as a megalomaniac and egotistical and a moral monster. And he gets into some of these passages with the Canaan conquest, and he helps us to understand what's going on and how to interpret some of that language. And I think he does a really good job as a philosopher, theologian, and an apologist that can maybe be a tool to help you.
Is God a Moral Monster by Paul Copan, C-O-P-A-N. Check that out, Elizabeth. Also, this reminds me of the argument, and I think it was Oprah Winfrey who may have started it, but we've heard it before, that, where she says, that's, the God of the Bible, he says he's a jealous God. How can God be jealous? Do you remember when she came out with that?
Yeah. She's not the first one, but
right.
Yeah, she probably had the biggest platform. Yeah, but well, again, we're thinking of jealousy in the worst sense when we think of it like that. Which there is a healthy jealousy. There's a good and a righteous jealousy. I'm jealous for the ones that I love. If someone were to come and seduce them, or someone were to come and, try to lure them into something harmful or something like that, if I wasn't jealous over that, there would be something wrong with me. So when it speaks about God being jealous, it's not that he's jealous for his own sake. He's jealous for the sake of those that he loves, because he knows that the idolatry that they are inclining toward is going to be destructive. So that's why he's jealous.
Elizabeth, thank you for your phone call today here on Pastor's Perspective. 888-564-6173 is our number. We're going to be here for about 30 more minutes. Let's go to Steve really quick. Steve, what did you want to tell Pastor Brian?
Okay, I was on the phone here listening to this program, and my long story short, I'm from Arcadia, Pasadena, down there. And when I got back from Vietnam years ago, my little brother Gary had a group called Led Zeppelin. Well, he was really close to Eddie Van Halen, Eddie and Alex. And so he asked me if I could take all of his friends to Gazzarri's up there. And they weren't famous yet, so I took them all to Gazzarri's. My brother would fight against Eddie at Pasadena City College, Battle of the Bands, and go second to Eddie. He got pretty close to Eddie. And then my brother, I took to Harvest Crusades years ago, and he went forward with Greg Laurie, as far as rock and roll. And then it was just to hear you talk about that. He said the day that Eddie died, he never got more phone calls. And then one day in the Valerie Martinelli, he was there in some back room. I think it was Eddie's place. And George Harrison walks in, so he's like one-on-one with the Beatles. He's like, why didn't I have him sign my guitar? My little brother is still alive. Eddie's not.
Yeah.
But he told me all about Eddie. I heard you talking about him, and I thought, I wonder if my brother ever shared with him.
Yeah.
But my brother was saved, and he's still a guitar player. He had a group called Led Zeppelin. It was a joke band, because when Squire Guitars came out for Fender, he was the guy, and they did a Led Zeppelin reggae joke thing, but he toured the world as Led Zeppelin. So Robert Plant, I saw a book with Robert Plant from Led Zeppelin, talking about my brother. My favorite band in the world today is Led Zeppelin. So it's just this Eddie and Alex Van Halen. The stuff you were talking about, I go, that was part of my life. As a worship leader for Paul Havsgard at Calvary Chapel High Desert, when Mike Ugardashe and Becky Ugardashe, we started that. In the Calvary Chapel in Big Bear, we started that. So just a lot of old.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, thanks, Steve, for the walk down memory lane.
Yes.
Second one today.
Memory Lane and Pasadena and Arcadia. Thank you, Steve. 888-564-6173 is our number. Going to take a short break, and then we'll be back with more of your questions. We've got Kathleen and Isabel and everyone else who wants to call in and talk to Brian Broderson and Bobby Conway. 888-564-6173 is the number. If you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, or Instagram, we've got the number right there on the bottom of your screen. We love when you guys call in and participate in the program by asking your questions. Again, the number, 888-564-6173. back on Pastor's Perspective, 888-564-6173. Brian Perez here with Brian Broderson and Bobby Conway, 888-564-6173. And back to the phones we go. Kathleen, thanks for calling in today. 888-564-6173 here in Santa Fe Springs. Welcome.
Hello. Hi. I finally got through. I've been meaning to call since yesterday, and I just wanted to get a quick perspective from the pastors. The passing of the Pope, and I've kind of heard some things about, how the former Pope he leaned a little bit left in some of his views. And I wanted to get a perspective of what you pastors thought about where the Pope is going to go. Do you think he might lean further left? Or, some people say, could this be the last Pope? And so I just wanted to get a perspective from our pastors. So.
Brian.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't have any idea who the future Pope might be. I've heard there's a couple of African candidates that seem like some people are saying that one or the other of them will probably be the Pope, but I don't know. And I don't know that anybody knows until they go through that process. Left-leaning, Francis definitely was more, I think, theologically liberal than Benedict, for sure, because Benedict was very staunchly conservative. And so I said yesterday, some of Francis's views, I think, were misrepresented. I think in some cases he was trying to offset some of the attitudes that were not, helpful toward people. Trying to encourage people to be compassionate, even with people that they disagreed with or people that were, living sinfully. But I do think, I think he went to the point of suggesting that it would be fine to bless same-sex relationships. And of course, the Church of England did the same thing, and I think that that's going too far. But at the same time, I think he, sometimes the rhetoric of hostility toward, say, people with, who are living in the LGBTQ world. I think he was trying to kind of swing things over just toward more compassion, just seeing people's humanity and not condoning their sin, but seeing their humanity. So I don't know. These are just the things I would hear, statements that he would supposedly make, and then the next thing you know, it's like, oh no, he didn't really say that. He said this, but they said he said that. So I think there was a ton of politics around him and the things that he said. And like I said yesterday, and I think it's true. I think a lot of the secular minds and people in media wanted him to say things that he wasn't actually saying, but they interpreted what he was saying in ways that they actually thought that he should have said it. So, but I don't know, Bobby. What do you think?
Yeah, we won't know till we see the puff of white smoke go up there at the Vatican. At the same token, it's probably a good chance that there could be somebody more progressive just because of those cardinals that he put in place. So there's more representation of that, but I don't know what the overall temperature inside the Vatican is on, the service that he did. And so I think it'll be revealed, when this all comes out. If you end up with somebody that's really progressive, I think that would indicate, that the the cardinals have moved in that direction along with him. So when he was brought in as a pope, we certainly weren't expecting some of the moves as far left as he went. And if he was resisted on the inside, that's a tough spot for the Cardinals a little bit when the Pope's your boss. But now with him being gone, if it tightens up a little bit, I think that might indicate that he had gone rogue a bit. If you get somebody progressive, then perhaps what you see is that's infiltrated its way in. Given the way that that things often work, it wouldn't surprise me if we did see somebody that was progressive like that in there, but we'll wait till we see that white puff of smoke.
Kathleen, thank you for your phone call today on Pastor's Perspective, 888-564-6173. Isabel and Menifee, thank you for calling in today. What's going on? How can we help you?
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for the program. This program is so awesome and so beneficial, so thank you for continuing on. I know it's been, 40 years, so awesome. My teenage daughter and I were doing dishes yesterday, and she asked me a question. She said, Mom, do you think Jesus will return in our lifetime, or will it be after we're gone? And I told her, I don't know, maybe it's weighing heavily on her mind, but I told her that I believed everything that had to have happened has happened in order for him to return. But I did tell her, but you know what, Bella, that's a good question for Pastor's Perspective. So here we are. And she's watching you guys on YouTube right now.
Hi, Bella.
Hi, Bella.
Hey, Bella.
Well, Isabel, that obviously this is a question that all we can do is speculate, right? We can't. I mean, who knows? I don't know. When I was much, much younger, I tended to think then that, it's got to be, any moment. I mean, I would, surprised that we've been around as long as we have. We're still here. I remember Pastor Chuck said to me one day some years ago, a few years before he passed away, he said, I don't understand. I thought the Lord would have come by now. And, so we've had our perspectives, and we have interpreted Scripture in such a way that we thought that everything was going to roll out. We basically thought we'd kind of, in a general sense, figured it out. But obviously we didn't, because we're still here. So I think, I think to say with any kind of certainty, oh, yes, absolutely, I'm sure that will be the case, I think that's just unwise. I mean, it seems like we're talking about some different lifetimes here. Your daughter, her lifetime is longer than the lifetime that we have, especially me, that we have ahead of us, So in her lifetime, maybe, history's an interesting thing, because there have been so many times in history where it seemed like we have got to be at the end. When you hit the year 1000, 1,000 years after the time of Jesus, everybody thought that Jesus was coming back in the year 1000.
The year one, why 1K?
Yeah.
Right.
So everybody thought that. And then, of course, the year 2000, everybody sort of was preparing for 2000 as well. And different calculations, 1988 was one, based on these different calculations from Scripture. So I think the wisest thing is just to say we don't know, but we do know that Jesus told us to just always be ready. And always be ready means simply to just follow him, love him, serve him, and just know that when the time is right according to him, he will come. And the world is a mess today. It's been a mess before. It's been so messed up before. It seemed like it can't go, this is it. It can't go any further. But it recovered. You think of the world at the end or toward the end of the Second World War. My goodness, I mean, who would have thought that you could ever recover from that? But we did.
Yeah.
So we don't know.
Bobby?
Yeah, that's such a good point. I've never been a guy to say dates or anything, but it wasn't too long ago, even on this show, where, war breaking out in Ukraine and with Russia. You had the whole thing take place with Israel. You just saw such a mess with the riots, COVID. I found myself thinking, man, it really looks like, this thing could be wrapping up, like with some of the coalition taking place in the Middle East and seeing the movement of China and Iran and Russia. So I wasn't, saying any dates because I didn't know. But I will say this has been good for me. And I think that, Brian, you went through this in the 60s, and you could emotionally navigate where we just were better than me, because I was, having a share of panic attacks, letting my anxiety act up. I just couldn't understand how this, I'm getting the church ready for martyrdom. I mean, it just felt like, ISIS is going to, be in our front doorstep anytime soon. And I just want to have a glass of iced tea at the end of the day. But all that to say, in a similar way, when these comparisons to our culture with the 60s, I think that it's really crazy to me how fast something can change in the culture. It's just the speed by which something can change for the good or the bad should always help us to remember that even when it seems bad, hey, just things can switch up and we can be encouraged by that. And that's one of the benefits of maybe God permitting certain things to happen, is some of the sanctification is that it reveals our anxiety and our worries. We can sink into depression. We fail to trust. We lose sight of things a little bit. And then we have to find a place to trust Him when things feel dark. And then when it gets light again, we can come out and we have a broader perspective. And I think sometimes when we're on our first pass in a cycle of real darkness in the culture, you freak out probably more than on your second pass, because you realize that things can change.
So you mentioned that Bella, this has been weighing heavy on her heart lately. What's the reason, do you think?
I don't know. Someone at church this past Sunday told her that, basically a message, hey, Bella, don't be weary of things. Just do the right thing. And I don't know. And then she popped that question on me yesterday. So that was just interesting.
Well, and the thing is, I would just encourage Bella that Jesus is going to come again. There's no question about that. When, we don't know. So that's our big hope, that, and whether, if He doesn't come, we're going to go to Him. So one way or the other, we're going to, have that meeting with Jesus, but He's going to come. He's going to finish what He came, to start when He inaugurated the kingdom by His death and resurrection. He's going to come and He's going to set up the kingdom. And that's the hope that we have. And we know that is where the world will end up. There's probably a lot of turmoil before it gets there, but we know that's where it's going. And I think for us as believers, we just have this great opportunity to say, I'm going to serve Jesus. I want to do the things that He's created me to do, that He's gifted me to do, that things that are going to spread His kingdom a little bit here and a little bit there. So, as long as we're here, I think we've got plenty of work to do. And so we can't be too preoccupied with when's He going to come, when's He going to come, when's He going to come. We just need to settle into He's going to come when He comes. But like Jesus himself said, he said, work while it is day. The night is going to come when no one can work. So it's day right now, and let's just serve the Lord, and let's be joyful that we know the end of the story, and we know that Christ is going to reign. He's going to set up the kingdom of God just like he promised, and it's going to be absolutely amazing. Two other things really quickly. I think the presence of Israel in the land is always something to consider, because I think the prophecies indicate that it's going to be in the latter part of the end times that they will be in the land. So they're there. They've been there since, officially since 1948. And you've got different things happening in the world as far as, the globalization process that's been underway for a long time. Trump's kind of thrown a wrench into it presently, but that's where the world has been moving. You have these really interesting advances in technology with AI and things of that nature. I think those are all probably components in the picture of what it's going to look like, but it could go on for a while. We just don't know.
Isabel, thanks for calling us today on Pastor's Perspective. And Bella, thanks for watching us on YouTube. 888-564-6173 is our number. And now here's Darnell calling in from Riverside. Hi, Darnell.
Hey, may Christ bless you, gentlemen. I'm calling in reference to Revelation chapter 1, verse 6. I see how you gentlemen could be considered priests because people come to you for leadership. You have congregations. You have some authority, but I'm a Christian. I don't feel like a king or a priest at all. So I was just wondering, who was John referring to in that verse?
Bobby, what say you?
Well, you're correct in the fact that, we're not kings, but the Bible talks about the priesthood of the believers. So there is a sense where, we are priests in that we serve under the high priest Jesus, and basically as priests we are working out his ministry purposes through the local church and into the world. And so we're not offering up sacrifices as priests, but rather we're offering up the sacrifice Jesus to the world. And so like a priest would offer sacrifices, we offer the sacrifice that Jesus became on our behalf to the world. And anytime we're sharing the gospel, we're giving an offering to the world and saying, partake. And so that's kind of a priestly function. When we pray, it's a priestly function. And then in the millennium, depending upon how, you tackle Ezekiel, that talks about how there'll be the temple, which would be the third temple that will be put in place. And some say it's symbolic, others say there'll be literal sacrifices again. I don't think every single person would be partaking in that, but I do think that the idea of a priesthood of believers, that we are intercessors, that we're engaged in ministry, and I don't know exactly what that would look like in an eternal way, in this sense, but whether it's just kind of a title without a responsibility, or if it's going to have a kind of a responsibility that will make better sense and crystallize for us as we move toward that new day.
What do you think, Darnell?
Yeah, I guess it makes sense because, I guess it has to be metaphorical, or maybe like after we die and go to heaven, because like I said, I'm no king, I'm no priest from my perspective. But maybe metaphorically it makes sense,
Well, actually, you are a priest if you're a believer, because, we are a royal priesthood. That's what the New Testament says. Peter said that. And like Bobby was saying, our priestly function is to represent God to people and represent people to God. So we can, as we pray, as we intercede, as we share the gospel, that's all priestly work. But, there's some different ways that passage is translated to, like the older version, the King James, New King James says, that he has made us kings and priests to our God and Father. Then some say he has made us a kingdom of priests. And then there is to be a kingdom and priest. So the obviously the Greek is a little bit, it's not just super crystal clear as the way it should be translated. But I do think, too, that he's talking about where we are ultimately headed. Remember, we're going to rule and reign with Christ on the earth. So the kingly part of it is not, we're not engaged in that at this point, but we're going to reign with him on the earth when he comes back. That's the privilege of his people, of the church. So we will be kings and priests with him at that point. So,
Darnell, thanks for your phone call today on Pastor's Perspective. Janelli. Where did Janelli go? Janelli hung up. Okay, so let's go to Mercedes in Fontana. Thanks for calling in today on Pastor's Perspective.
Hi, Pastors. How are you?
Good.
Good, thank you.
Hi. My question is, my brother came to our church this Easter Sunday, and we have a lead pastor, which is a male. We have like 4 different locations. Well, we watched the service on through video, but the pastor at our church is a female. And when we got home, I said, "Did you like the service?" And he frowned upon that we had a female pastor, and he said, "In the Bible it says that no females should be pastors." And I said, "No, wait a minute." I said, we have a lead pastor, but I was so confused. I've heard that before, and I know somewhere in Timothy, it says that, but I'm like, I want clarification so I can have concrete evidence to explain to him that it is okay.
So again, the pastor of your church, the lead pastor, the main pastor of all the campuses is a male, but at your particular campus, it's a female.
Correct.
And your brother had a problem with that. Bobby, what do you say to Mercedes?
Yeah, well, I would say that I'm sympathetic to that, to your brother's statement there. I don't see how I could look at the scriptures and make a case for a female lead pastor. I feel like I might have to do some biblical gymnastics to get there, and that's not even a statement, because if I'm just being honest, I mean, I look and go, hey, I could see how women could function in that role and do a great job in that sense. It's more of there's order that God has in the scriptures, where even you see Jesus, where he submits to the Father, but he's equal, but there's different roles. And so I do think that in a church, if you have, like a woman's pastor, like my wife's the woman's pastor, when she's pastoring a woman, I don't think that term is a problem at all. I mean, she's pastoring the women. But if it's a lead pastor, that's where it can be problematic. Now, if a woman is teaching in a church and there's a male lead pastor, that gets debated as well. But I personally can see room for that in Scripture, because that's a teaching gift, but you still have to take some time to understand even the passages on that. So if anything, at first glance in the Scriptures, it can look like, wow, this is restrained a little bit here. But then I think that one extreme would be, women, they just conserve kids and hang out with women, and they can't use their gift of teaching with mixed adults. On the other extreme, I think, would be, well, there's just no clear roles that are to be met out between the genders in the church. And so me saying this, if it was me, I'm not God, this is one of those areas I go, hey, it wouldn't make a difference to me. I think women are amazing, and I think they could function that way. It's more of just me trying to be obedient to the scriptures. And as much as I would like to see that, I don't think that that's my right to say women can be lead pastors.
Pastor Brian, 30 seconds.
30 seconds. Well, I don't know, Bobby, if you heard exactly what she said, but she said that they do have a lead pastor who is a man, and then the campus pastor in her case is a woman.
Oh,
so,
okay. I thought she said her lead pastor was a woman.
Yeah, no. So I think that makes it a little bit different, and
yes.
I think, but Bobby gave a good answer, so I'm done.
Okay. Wise use of 30 seconds. Mercedes, thanks for your phone call today on Pastor's Perspective. Carol, we ran out of time. Can you call us back tomorrow?
Yes, I'll call you guys back tomorrow.
Thank you. And Mark, you call us back tomorrow too, okay? Mark doesn't want to call us back tomorrow. Please do. Pastor's Perspective will be here between 3 and 4. God bless you guys. Bye.